Hi guys, and welcome back to Memoirs of a Trader. Today I have a very special guest. This particular guest is someone that I have been looking forward to speaking with probably the most that I've ever been. Now, all the other people that I've interviewed, I know you're watching this as well, don't be disheartened. I love you as well. But there are particulars about this individual that really fascinated me. And now, before I get into the actual detail of what he does, because I'm telling you, he does an abundance of things, allow me to introduce to you Sebastian Bates.
Thank you so much for having me. What an intro.
No, honestly, truth be told, truth be told, even the people here, I have said when they asked me, what are the guests that are coming, I said, look, and there's Sebastian that's coming on, and I'm really looking forward to speaking with him. I think it was all about not that I only find you fascinating, but everything that you believe in, what you stand for, your morals, and how you go about your day-to-day person, because you come across as a very, very busy man.
Yeah.
Right? So I want to start off with, first and foremost, introduce yourself to the audience. Top line, exactly who you are and what you do. Top
line, my name is Sebastian Bates, and I'm the founder of the Warrior Academy and the Bates Foundation, which is a global charity. That's top line.
We're going to get into everything. We're going to get into it. So I'm going to start off with this. We don't need better educated leaders leading businesses, communities and countries. We need leaders with a strong moral compass, a strong set of values, and a black belt character. Like you said that. Mm-hmm. Explain.
Let me ask you a question.
Ask me.
If you could only pass down 5 traits or values or skills to your kids, bearing in mind you're now a father.
Yes.
What would those 5 things be?
Be courageous. Mm-hmm. Show respect. Have good, deep morals. Be happy. And find peace.
Courage, respect, morals, happiness, peace. Brilliant. Now, isn't it funny how, I've asked hundreds of parents this, and we all say similar things, right? It's important values and traits like the soft skills, the character traits that really set our kids up for a happy and successful life in the future when we're not around, right? And that's kind of the point of parenting, to get these little human beings ready for a time where you're not there, right? We don't own our kids. We're just mentoring them on this journey, so trying to set them up for a happy life, right? But if you look at society, within society, we put a disproportionate amount of effort, time, and money and resources on academics over soft skill development, over character development. And so I saw this problem 15 years ago, and I made it my life mission to resolve that, or to aim to help towards resolving it. If I look at a school in Dubai, and I look at how we're ranking schools in Dubai, we're in Dubai right now. If I was to rank the schools in Dubai, go onto Google and find out, they would be ranked by the KHDA primarily on their academic results. If I was to ask my sister how she's ranked as a primary school teacher in the UK, or even how private schools are ranked in the UK, in that situation, it doesn't matter what she's done to mentor the kids in her class through chronic bullying, anxiety, separation of parents, the loss of a loved one.
It's always going to be the result.
If she's not got them good grades,
yes,
it's not a good year for her. Now, we send our kids to school 6+ hours a day, and they go through this constant environment where the pressure is on academics over soft skills. Now, schools are making a difference. They're trying to implement more soft skill development, more character development. But I always say to parents, look, school is such a big machine, right? It's so big, it's going to take 20 years, by which point your kids will have kids. So it's too late. And so I look at it like 80-20. I think that we're putting 80% of effort on and energy into academics and 20% on soft skill development. So if you look at what we do at the Warrior Academy, we've created a program which sits alongside the academic education of children to develop their character, to develop their soft skills. It's teaching kids to regulate their emotions. It's improving their self-esteem and their confidence. It's improving their conduct. It's giving them a moral compass. It's improving their the way in which they see themselves in the world and the journey in which they're on. and how they make better decisions. And ultimately these things come together, and it's their character that's going to influence every single decision they make in life, not their academics. If you want to improve a child's academics, improve their character first, and you'll watch the academics soar. If you want to improve a child's character, working on the academics doesn't necessarily have that carryover.
Correct.
So if I look at some of the major issues we face as humanity right now, it's not a lack of education. It's not a lack of academics. It's a lack of a moral compass. It's a lack of knowing what are the right decisions to make. We go through life as leaders, and we have to make so many decisions. And I see so many leaders making the wrong decisions, especially today.
So off the back of that, we're now in 2024. Would you say a decade ago or 2 decades ago, maybe in our generation when we were growing up, that the way kids were then are different to the way kids are now? And would you say that it's more so important to give kids a moral compass now than what it would have been 2 decades ago?
The environment's changed entirely. You look 10 years ago. Did you have a smartphone 10 years ago? Probably not, right? No? I mean, I grew up with a Nokia 3310.
I had one of these, I was living in the UK at the time, and Coca-Cola released one of these little brick phones. And if you collected the caps of the Coca-Cola, then if you collect that with £30, you'll get your first kind of Ericsson phone. So me and my dad were just everywhere trying to get these red caps, and we couldn't afford, these nice mobile phones and the Nokias. We had to get that. So that's what I had. And that was my first ever phone.
So the way I look at it is this. If you look at the influence of the smartphone on young people, you'll notice that the suicide rate of children has soared since the smartphone came around. And they're actually completely identical in the trajectory they're on. And so that's the devastating thing I'm finding, is that, I spent the last week speaking to doctors and psychologists, thought leaders on, child development, child psychology, behavioral psychology, and cyber safety experts. One thing keeps coming up, and that's the smartphone, right? Because the smartphone is the access tool to social media, to apps, to your kids growing up using filters on every single photo they take, and they copy their parents with that. And so within the smartphone, you've got access to upward comparison. Now, if you look at human beings, we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people. And actually, that's designed to serve us. It's not our fault, right? You've got upward comparison, you've got lateral comparison. So your upward comparison, you're comparing to people you think are higher than you in some sort of regard, right? You believe, or they perceive to be more successful in something that you want. Lateral comparison, someone similar to you, and downward comparison, someone that you believe you are superior to in some way, typically around status or whatever. And so upward comparison exists in order for us to have something ambitious to aspire towards. It's not necessarily a bad thing. The problem is when that upward comparison becomes unrealistic, and then it becomes kind of toxic. It's not something you can attain, but it's something that plagues your life. And so you live your life with less gratitude. You live your life with a self-esteem that's kind of shrinking, and you turn into a kind of shell of yourself. And so if you look at social media, there's a huge amount of upward comparison. Kids as young as 6 are using smartphones.
6?
They're accessing apps and social media and so on.
6?
Right?
Is this a thing?
Yep, 6. They're playing on TikTok. They're doing all sorts of stuff, right? And so what's incredible to me is how you change a child's life and the trajectory they're on. You influence their life differently by giving them access to a device like that, which then sets them up for using apps and using social media and so on. And so one of the tragic things about that is we believe as parents that's okay because we can restrict them, we can control the settings, we can make sure they're doing the right thing. But we can't, because kids are so clever.
Yes.
The knowledge gap is massive, You just look, just 5 years difference or 2 years difference. And when AI comes in more and more and more, the divide just grows. And so, you look when you're younger, right? You would have found ways on the computer to, like, do you know what I mean?
As you were talking and saying that, I was thinking in my head, I remember when I had my PlayStation, and then I'd be playing and I can hear the steps. My mum is coming up the stairs. So all I did, switch the television screen off and put a cover over the green light, and that's pretending like I'm doing my work. Amazing. She would come in and check. So you find ways.
I'm doing my homework.
You find ways.
Yeah, and as kids get older, they get better and better at finding ways ways to sneak around, and I'm actually quite fond of a disruptive personality, because so often we look at kids and we're like, oh, they're badly behaved and they're so disruptive in class, and I'm like, these are the kids that go on to do incredible things because they challenge the status quo, and I love that about disruption, and I think that we need to nurture disruption in a healthy way. But what's fascinating to me is how we think we have control as parents, right? But the second we give them, if I give you as a child my phone, it's like, right, that's me saying, okay, I'm giving you access to something which I won't fully be able to control. And if you do it at a young age, every single professional I've met, everyone who really studies this stuff says 13 plus. Don't give your child a smartphone before they're 13.
How do you stop it? When your child is in an environment where every kid has got smartphones, everyone's parents have given them a smartphone, Christmas or birthday, whatever, and now you're the odd one out, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So we talk about, when we talk about children and bullying now, right? How do you stop your child from coming and say, Dad, I want a mobile phone, because everyone's got a mobile phone. And now you're the one being picked on because you don't have a mobile phone. Yeah,
so that's one of the reasons I'm digging into this so much, is my 6-year-old asked me for a mobile phone. Every day she wants a smartphone.
And just for the audience, how many kids do you have and how old are they?
I've got 2 kids and 1 on the way. So my daughter's 6, my son is 3.
Congratulations on the 3rd.
Thank you so much. We're going to tell everyone the gender this weekend.
This weekend.
So yeah, what's your bet, girl or boy? What do you reckon? Oh, really? Interesting. Good. So just a side note, it's funny because I look back and throughout my family history, it's 4 in every generation, it looks like, right? It's always been girl, boy, girl, boy. So 15 or so of my family have all said they think girl. So it's quite a funny guess. Everyone thinks that. So to answer your question, if you don't give your child a smartphone, well, first of all, why would they ask? They would ask because their friends have one, right?
Yes.
That's the reason. And they feel like the odd one out.
Correct.
And if you don't give your child a smartphone, then it's likely they will be perceived as different. And so they're more likely to be bullied. So be it.
So be it. Yeah. Interesting.
And the reason I say that is I can prepare my kids for bullying. After 10 years of studying bullying, interviewing people and writing a best-selling book on it, I know I can prepare my child for bullying more than I can prepare them for the dangers of the smartphone.
So that's interesting. So let's talk about that bullying aspect. So there's variations of bullying, right? There's social media bullying.
Yep.
There is physical, verbal bullying. There's physical bullying. There's attacks. So
and there's assault. So
there's assault. So
at some point, bullying shifts from physical bullying to just assault.
To assault. So where do you draw this line? So you said, okay, so be it.
Yeah.
Now, let's say your daughter comes back saying, Dad, because you didn't give me the smartphone, they're calling me names. So we're just on the verbal at the minute, calling me names, right? How would you prepare your child for that?
So there are several steps you can do as a parent to prepare your child. First of all, most parents make the mistake of being reactive. So in that situation, that's me being reactive. Oh, as a parent, I'm can't believe she's being bullied at school. Right, I'm going to speak to their parents. Right. I'm going to speak to the school. I'm going to pull her out. I'm going to change schools. I'm going to change the class. All this sort of stuff. Immediate.
Common reaction.
Emotional,
impulsive
reaction.
Yes.
We spoke about briefly earlier reactive parenting.
Yes.
It's just funny to me how one of the most typical transitions, which I know are going to occur, right? I know that your child is going to go through bullying at some point. Like there's a 99% chance, or she'll become a bully in some regard, maybe both. Okay, and for a parent, that's like, what? You can't say that. But I've worked with 30,000 kids around the world, and I've worked in 100 schools, and it's fascinating to me when schools say they're a bully-free school, because bullying is just
impossible.
Right, it's a part of the human condition. For a child to go through life without going through bullying at all is kind of a miracle. But what's fascinating to me is how we are so reactive and we're not proactive, right? We teach our kids to cross the road. We should do. We look for a zebra crossing. Although there's not much use in Dubai, but we teach them to look for a zebra crossing. The amount of times I stand by a zebra crossing.
Listen, but I will all stand at a zebra crossing. I'm polite. I'll wait for someone to stop.
I've accepted it now.
No one stops. Yeah. But if my wife stood there, they will all stop. There's a nice queue. They stop at my wife.
Nice.
They always stop at my wife's.
When I go on my dog walks, I just put a wig on. I'll be fine. So.
No, so when it comes with my dog, I just let him go. Walk across
really?
I forced him to stop.
You play a game of chicken then?
Yeah, I forced him to stop because I've got him on a tight, so I'll pull him.
Just phone and pretend to step.
And so I just let him go on, Pacho, you go. Yeah, and then they do all emergency break.
Sacrifice your dog
stop.
for the chicken game.
Stop.
Bleed, you can pull it back at least.
Pull it back.
So here's the thing, right? We know that our kids will eventually have to cross the road without us.
Yes.
So what do? We teach them where to cross, to look left and right, to get eye contact with the driver, and then to cross when it's safe.
Correct.
We prepare them for the eventuality of that dangerous
This is going to
situation.
happen.
Yeah, exactly. But
We
we don't
right.
do that.
So I get it. So you're trying to say because kids are going to be the bully be bullied.
Yeah.
Prepare them for it.
Exactly. Just accept it.
Wow.
Don't fight against the fact that you think it's going to happen, because it's a part of learning social skills as well. And so, if you look at bullying, bullies aren't bad people. Typically, a child who bullies is trying to regain some level of control in their life because they're going through something difficult. Their parents could be bullying them, or at worst, abusing them. They could have lost a loved one, be acting out because of this. If my kids are tired, right? If my daughter hasn't had much sleep last night, she'll bully her younger brother. Not in a horrible way, but she'll be really short-tempered with him and argue a lot and this sort of stuff. And that's just from being a bit tired. Now you imagine a child who doesn't get any sleep because their parents are alcoholics and they're shouting all night, right? Or a child who is being picked on by their big brother or big sister. All these different variables that come in. So if you are to say that bullying doesn't happen because we can teach kids to learn to regulate their emotions and understand why they do things, do you really think that you can teach a child under 10 to fully understand introspectively why they are displaying negative behavior traits? Of course you can't.
Of course you can't.
So the whole argument that we can prevent bullying entirely is just a fallacy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is you look at the data. Okay, well, if you're a parent, you would say, how likely is my child to cross the road and be hit by a car? Actually, pretty unlikely. How likely are they to be bullied? 10 times more likely than that. But what do we prepare them for? More crossing the road.
Crossing the road.
Right. And so
exactly.
now if you look at, and obviously that's a fatal accident that happens, but if you look at bullying, I would say it's one of the most traumatic experiences that a human being can go through. And the reason I say that is because if you're bullied as a child, you question everything about you, the trust of the environment you're in, the community you're in.
For sure.
You even question the protection your parents can give you and the resilience that you've got as a human being. And so sometimes bullying impacts a child so much that it's like a dark shadow that follows them for the rest of their lives, right? You get bullied as a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old, that dark shadow follows you until you turn around and have the courage to overcome it on your own.
Yes.
Until you say, I love and own the traits about myself that make me different and unique. And until you can do that as a human being, you're likely to have bullying repeat and repeat from childhood to adolescence to the workplace, then maybe even into your relationships. And here's the really devastating thing. If we don't learn to overcome bullying on our own, it's like a demon that we're facing, and we're saying to our kids, I couldn't face this demon, over to you.
You just pass it on.
You pass it on.
You pass it on.
The dark cloud follows you and it becomes generational. And so I know so many people in the deep conversations I've had around bullying who didn't have the courage to face it themselves. They were bullied for their weight or their height or how they looked or whatever it was, and they end up passing those insecurities onto their kids. When you pass insecurities on, these become the things that are highlighted for bullies then to attack, right? So when you look back at what we can do to prepare kids for bullying, several things. Like there's so many things. The devastating thing about bullying is it's going to happen and it's tragic. The good thing about it is it's predictable.
So give me some advice. So my daughter is going to turn 2 years old this Thursday.
Yeah.
And so I'm fully aware that she will either be bullied or... this is interesting because I've had this conversation with my wife. And if my daughter was to go to school in Latvia, which is where we live, my daughter is mixed race. She naturally, via her skin color, looks different. She will not just speak Russian, she will also speak English, possibly even more so English than Russian. She will look different because generally a lot of Russians, they have a distinctive look about them, but so she will look very, very different. She may talk differently. Her thinking will be different because she has us as parents who think differently to how a lot of people in Latvia think. And so I'm very aware, having this conversation with my wife, fearing that my daughter at some point will be bullied. Yeah. How and what advice would you give me and my wife as parents of how we can prepare my daughter for this?
So when you listed those things that made your daughter unique, for me listening, they all sound like incredible strengths.
Absolutely.
It's like, wow, what an incredible human being you've created, right? They're going to go out and they're going to do amazing things and they're going to live this incredible life.
I tell my daughter her
with unique
superpower is her mind.
Exactly, right? So, but there are also the things that are likely to get her in trouble and get her bullied because they make her different. Of course, we know as adults, the things that make us different are the things that separate us from the crowd and encourage us to go and do great things. But the problem is so many young people don't realize that, right? And especially when they're preteen and teen, they just want to fit in. They don't want to be different. And you know, the challenge we've got as parents is making them understand that the unique differences they've got are the true strengths in their life. You look at a business owner, right? What makes one business different to another business, and they do the same thing, is the personality of the individual, the experiences and the traits that make that person so unique. And so what I would work on as a parent, speaking from my perspective as a parent, but also someone who's worked with a lot of kids and parents, is I would say, be acutely aware of the things that make your child different and encourage them to understand it's their superpower, right? Educate them on the fact that these things are incredible and that they're very lucky to have them, right? But obviously when you're complimenting them, you shouldn't so much compliment them on the kind of unique traits they've got. It should be more about the things that they work hard to achieve.
Right.
That's a very important aspect of it, because a lot of people over compliment on the natural abilities we've got, which can cause other issues. But I would say if you can from a very young age really nurture that understanding that the unique traits are what make them so incredible and so powerful, right? And make that an empowering conversation. But at that age, everything should be taught in stories. So I would highlight certain traits about her, and I would tell a story about someone who's got those traits. Someone who was bilingual, who could speak different ways. Someone who lived in a foreign country and thought differently. Someone who looked different, right? All these different things, and tell through stories, because human beings learn so much through stories. So at that age, that's what I would do. As they get older, I would start to, again, tell stories about bullying. I would talk about bullying. And I would tell stories about how someone becomes a bully and why they become a bully. Because one of the most powerful things we can do is change the framing of bullying, right? A great example I've got so many examples of kids we've helped, but one example comes to mind is a child who was bullied for about 2 or 3 years, and it was beginning to become chronic bullying, right? And they feared their bully. They had this fear and intimidation. They would walk into the room and they'd be terrified of them. And so they were about 10 years old. And I remember speaking to them and saying, why do you think they bully? And guiding them through this story of a child becoming a bully and asking them questions about this person who was bullying them. We kind of dug into their life, and it turned out they've got an older brother who was picking on them quite a bit, and they've got parents who were separated and all this sort of stuff. And so we asked if that person was happy and so on. And this 10-year-old was incredible because they had the emotional understanding. They were very sensitive, right? So their emotional intelligence was quite high, which they didn't realize was their strength at that time, but it actually soon became their strength. But they went into school without fearing the bully. That fear and intimidation was replaced with empathy, with understanding. And so they actually went up to the bully while they were bullying them and asked them, what's wrong? And it was fascinating when the mum told me this, because this bully was mentored through bullying by the victim.
Wow.
And within 2 weeks the bullying stopped. They became best friends.
That's powerful. But my God, does that take guts?
Any confrontation, especially at a young age, at any age, takes courage, right? And so what I often find with kids or with anyone, there tends, even in relationships, look at a toxic relationship where one person wants to leave or whatever, we typically don't make a change until the courage level matches the uncomfortability level, right? For some people that can be a matter of weeks, for other people it can be a matter of years.
Yes.
So a child can go through bullying for years until they get enough courage to say, do you know what? this is so bad. Whatever the repercussions of me facing the bully are worth it, because I can't continue like this. And so that's why bullying tends to have to get to breaking point before something happens. And so within the not a victim system, we call that the fork in the road, where a child either decides to be a victim or they decide not to be a victim. And so, it's amazing how mentoring at the right time at that breaking point can actually help people transition into a positive direction very, very quickly.
Yeah. And so you mentioned before that if you don't have the courage to stand up and resolve your bullying situation, that's going to be passed on to your children. And if they don't, it's going to be passed on, and it becomes a generational problem. So a little bit about my story. That when I was bullied quite severely, really intensely when I was young. And I mention and I speak about this on episode 2 of this podcast, where Kai speaks deeply about what I went through. And there's a lot that people still don't know. Now, I went down and I had a music career. And one of the reasons I went down a music career, and that all stemmed from school, because I used music as a bullying defense mechanism. I found my group that accepted me for me, didn't look at my color skin or my religion or anything along the lines of that, and accepted me because I was able to rhyme. Yeah, I was able to rhyme. So I clutched onto it because I found something here. Yeah, people will stop bullying me solely by me standing next to these guys.
Yeah.
Right. So I started to rhyme and stand next to these guys, and that was my bullying defense mechanism. And I think through bullying and what happened to me, I felt a deep rage within me, because I started to become very angry as a young man. I didn't like the way that relatives and people would talk bad about my family, especially my mother, because we are one of we are the lowest caste system in the Hindu religion. So we are the cleaners. So we are the lowest of the lowest. So people always talk bad about how we are, what we do, etc. And so that always was, and my father never really protected my mother with all the barrage of hate, And so I was growing up a very young, angry man, and boy. And then so my mother sent me to channel that rage via Taekwondo, and that's where I took up martial arts, and I felt I could release some of that rage, to the point where sometimes I would get so angry at my opposition, and we're just sparring, that I would take off my headgear, my gloves, and I'd physically with my fists raw start punching them, to the point where Hiram John, my instructor, would stop everything, stop me and send me away. And sometimes the opposition's parents were watching, and they would obviously scream out and stuff. But I couldn't stop myself because of the rage that was inside of me, because of the bullying and how people were talking about my family. As I grew older, I matured. At the same time, when we talk about the rage and the anger, I got involved in gangs. This was back in London. I got involved in gangs, and so I don't know whether, because of what happened to me as a youngster, it made me then turn into the bully. So when I got involved in the gangs, you couldn't touch me. There was nothing you could do. And if I wanted to do something to you, I could. If I wanted to take your girlfriend, I could. If I wanted to take your riches, I could. And so it was like the bullied turned into the bully.
Yeah, very typical.
And then now at 38 years old, my wife often says that my whole upbringing and everything that happened to me is still there. I'm not an angry, I'm not a reactive person. I'm not aggressive. I'm not violent, anything along the lines of that. But what's in me is in me. And my wife always says it's because of how you grew up and your upbringing. Yeah. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and the perspective there of becoming a bully is really important. A lot of parents would never think their child will become a bully, especially if they go through bullying. They think they've gone through bullying and therefore they're less likely. If your child goes through bullying, they're more likely to become a bully. You go through something traumatic. I remember at the beginning of this I said, why does a bully? Because they want to find control in their life, right? So you put a child through bullying, they lose control in their life. Even if they overcome it or it stops, they then feel like they need to get the control back. So go back to that story, the older brother picking on the child who then becomes a bully and picks on other kids. It's this flow of negative energy. Did you ever ask your parents if they were bullied? I mean, you watched your mum being bullied.
I watched her, and I was helpless. I couldn't do anything. I was very reactive when relatives would come to the house and they would say something. I would absolutely just switch like this to protect her. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But I was a young one, so everyone would just bat me off.
Here's a question for you. Do you see how bullying has served you?
I am a 38-year-old man that my wife would describe as cold. I don't have the same emotional connection with things as maybe most people have. I am very honest. I'm very direct, truthful. And so the cold of what my wife describes is what gets to me a little bit, because I can't turn it on.
Yeah.
I don't know how to be. I don't know what to expect or how to be when it comes to emotions like this. So I don't cry at movies.
So let me walk it through this way then. You were bullied.
Yes.
Did you overcome that bullying? Did you stand up to the bullies? Or did you just change location, change your environment?
I think that I didn't face the bullies. I became popular. And via the music and via my physical appearance changing and me starting to get a lot more female attention, the bullying stopped because I was now a popular. So
you raised your status and became more empowered.
Correct.
You ended up loving yourself more, and that basically...
That confidence grew.
Yeah, and that basically deflected a lot of the bullying. Right?
Correct.
What's curious to me is that when someone goes through bullying, even if they then improve on themselves and so on, they still feel this resentment, like why didn't I stand up to them? And that can be like planting a seed, like a little toxic seed that stays in us until we feel like we've had the courage to overcome something or to speak up for ourselves. And so for a lot of people I've met, they go through bullying, they were either moved away from the bullying or whatever it is, but that little seed has been left behind, and they almost feel like they wish they stood up to that thing, that person, that energy. And it's really important that at some point in their life they do stand up for themselves.
So let's talk about that seed with me then. The bullies in school, I remember. I know their names. And during my teen years, if they were at a nightclub that I was at, it would be a problem for them.
Right.
Because I would not let it go, because I remember what you did.
So you stood up for yourself in those situations as you grew apart, and then when you did meet, you were basically higher status than them, and then the bullying kind of stopped, right?
Yeah, the bullying had already stopped.
So this was you being in a more of a powerful position than them.
Definitely.
Did you ever confront them?
No, a lot of the time they would remove themselves from the situation. They would run away. They would again, this was during that kind of
standing up, isn't it? Though?
Yeah, it is a form of standing up, but I still can't mentally let it go.
But they're not important.
They're not important.
The seed's important, right? So when you look at bullying, you look at any negative experience. It's not the people that are in it. You don't need to find these people and confront them. But this seed within us, right? When we don't stand up for ourselves and we're like, why didn't I do that?
Yeah.
Like that seed needs to be confronted, and especially as a dad. Because this is the thing that I find, right? This parenting is just this incredible way it has this incredible way of forcing you to look introspectively at yourself, and any little negative trait or experience you've had just finds its way of coming out. It's brought to the surface by the things that you realize you're triggered by, and then if you don't deal with it, it's then brought down into the next generation, into your kids.
Yeah.
And so it could be that there's some other way in your life where you stood up for yourself and had the courage to overcome confrontation or whatever it is. But I think that's really key. I think a lot of people go through bullying and they don't confront the bullying, and they don't have that courage over crisis moment, right, where there's a flip. And so instead, they live life wishing they did. And that has a really detrimental impact on their life in some ways. I'm not saying you have. There could be many times in your life where you've then said, right, I want to stand up for myself and have the courage to do this, and not avoiding confrontation and so on and so on, right?
Oh, I grew to take confrontation head on.
Yeah.
And that's you pair that with confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes...
So why did you grow? Why did you just said, I grew to take on confrontation head on. So do you think it's good to take confrontation head on?
I think I'd rather deal with something than shy away from something.
I agree. So do you think this is a good trait you've developed?
I believe so, yes.
And where does that trait stem from?
That stems from all the bullying I went through.
So do you see how bullying serves you?
Yes.
The bullying you went through went on to serve you throughout your life.
Fascinating.
This is the devastating thing as a parent, right? Because as a parent, the horrible thing for me is I've got 3 kids, well, 2.5, and I know they are all going to go through bullying, and it might just be the best thing that ever happens to them.
Because my God, it's gonna
the
build
worst
you.
thing for me.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I fear it. I don't, and no parent wishes their child to go through this. But deep down, you know it's going to happen. So a question to you: Were you bullied or were you the bully?
I think both to a degree. And so I think we moved around a lot as a family. Dad was in the army. So we moved. One of the key moves, I moved when I was about 2, and then when I was about 6 again. And so I moved from a school in Aldershot with about 40 kids in a class, loads of military kids, pretty full-on class. My education had sunk so much from that situation. I was 6, 7 years old. There was no control of the class. In 1 year, we had 13 teachers come and go. It was uncontrollable. And so my education was suffering. So we moved to the countryside. My parents found a relatively cheap but private school where I went for about 3 years, I think, 2 to 3 years. And immediately when I walked in, I'd come from this state school with 40 kids with no behavior to this private school with 10 kids in a class and individual desks with all these rich kids who, my parents were both government jobs, all these kids with nice cars outside and all this sort of stuff. And I was immediately the different kid. And I remember walking in and straight away didn't fit in, like it was a totally different environment. And so the bullying I had started off kind of separation, isolation, name calling, this sort of stuff, to the point where I was kind of, the bell would go and I'd go to the library and eat lunch on my own just to avoid it. Then it kind of got physical, where they would find me and beat me up, basically, hold my arms and legs and kick me between the legs, this sort of stuff. So then I found martial arts. And so for me, the martial arts was a really key aspect of this. It was, my parents were like, we want to build his confidence, so we want to empower him through martial arts. And so I remember walking into the dojo for the first time and seeing these black belts performing things. It was taekwondo, right? And I was like, wow, this is what I want to do. I've got to do this. I've got to be like them, right? And so very, very quickly got into it, and I was competing very early on. I think the first competition was about 3 to 6 months into it. And
wow, very quick.
I loved the sparring.
Very quick.
I wasn't really into the patterns. Now I understand the value of it, of course, but I just wanted to do all the sparring. The fitness and the sparring was just what I loved doing. Anyway, that gradually built my confidence to the point where I remember when I think I was about 9 or 10 years old. I was playing football in this warehouse, right, which is part of the school. It's old Victorian school. It's a bit like Hogwarts. And they had this warehouse attached to it where they used to store wool back in the day. And it was all cement ground. And so I remember playing football with the other boys there. And I was running down, I had the ball, and one of the boys came up behind me and just kicked both my legs. And so I went straight down, head hit the floor. And I remember standing up and immediately turned around and punched him in the face. and it's amazing, because that was just the point of, after 3 or 4 years of severe bullying,
Was that pent-up anger?
Yeah, my dad came into school to speak to the whole class in his army clothes. Like, you would never get away with it nowadays, right? But it was just that point of no return. It was like, right, the courage has overtaken the crisis. You know, this is now needs to change. And I remember just being complete shock. He fell over. He was the ringleader, right? He fell over. Everyone was completely shocked. I was completely shocked. The pecking order of the whole group completely changed. I remember running off and being really sad. What have I done? You know, the immediate response from the teachers at that time in an old school environment, that was right. You need to go down here, go outside the headmistress office. I was standing with my hands behind my back with my nose against the wall for 30 minutes. You know, like I just started a fight without any consideration of the 3 or 4 years of bullying. They were just unaware. They were aware, but they didn't know how to deal with it, right? And so it was fascinating for me. That was the kind of the turning point. And so I guess in some ways then the negative flow of energy for me, I wasn't a bad bully, but I think I was picking on people around me a little bit. Do you know what I mean? To try and get control back in my life. But then that certainly changed when I got to secondary school. But it was certainly that shift, you know, that transition. And going through it.
Are you still doing martial arts now?
Yeah, so I mean, right now I'm focusing more on other kind of challenges I've got. I'm heavily into skiing at the moment, so I'm doing a lot of heli skiing and this sort of stuff, which takes me away from martial arts. But 25 years of martial arts, 6 different styles. You know, competed nationally multiple times: taekwondo, kickboxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, professional fighting in Thailand as a Thai boxer. You know, it's taken me around the world studying.
So do you know why I stopped taekwondo?
Why did you stop?
So I got to first dan black belt, loved it. I was taken around the country to a lot of competitions in my parents' home. There is a huge trophy cabinet with all sorts, because because of that rage that was inside me as a kid, I could not accept losing. Yeah. So for me, it was always you win, so that's first place, or you've lost. There's no second, third in my eyes. There is no. So because if you're second, you didn't win.
No.
You haven't won. Simple as that. So, and my mum and dad always encouraged me to win. Right, so I always went for it. So I have an array of accolades, but I stopped. Remember, I mentioned that I started going down the gang environment. I stopped because martial arts could not dodge bullets. So I can be there and I can get into my L stance and I can try and beat someone up. They take out a gun.
Yeah.
They trigger it. I'm gone.
Well, I think if you look at martial arts, what is the point of martial arts? To teach you how to defend yourself?
There's a lot Mars can really teach you. My
so
God,
you know, so for me, it's interesting because I look at it like one huge aspect of martial arts is self-protection. Now that could be physically in person, but nowadays it's actually arguably, you know, learning to defend yourself is something like digital. And so we've got a digital black belt within our program. We teach our kids how to set their iPads up, their phones up, how to look after themselves online, how to look after their online reputation.
That's clever.
All this sort of stuff. So we've got cyber safety experts who come and look after our kids and teach our instructors. We hold weekly lessons on this. And so it's interesting, when you then look at martial arts, you're like, right, okay, so there's self-protection aspect. Then there's the whole environment of which it's giving you a moral compass, right? It's teaching you the important skills, soft skill development, character development, and so on, how to live your life. Now, arguably, one of the greatest things you could have done is stayed with martial arts with a mentor who encouraged you to look at things differently, and it would have made you challenge the morality of the situation, the community you were in. So maybe in some ways, the best self-defense would have been not being there in the first place, right? So maybe martial arts could have given you that. When I first started the Warrior Academy, I came back from Thailand, where I'd been fighting professionally, came back to the UK. I was near Bristol and Bath area, and there was a rundown inner city gym. Became a personal trainer because I wanted to do something physical, right? And I took over this rundown inner city Thai boxing gym. 15 to 20, I would say 14 to 17-year-olds were in there, mostly guys. They came there to fight. They just wanted to let off steam. You could walk in and you could cut the testosterone with a knife there, like it was full on. And I remember walking in, and I was 19. And these guys were up to 17 years old, right? These guys were fighting every single weekend. Drugs, alcohol, substance abuse. They were going through domestic violence at home. Some of them were sleeping rough on the street the day before they would come and train. They had really difficult lives because they were making the wrong decisions, but also because their environment was influencing them so much. But we have more control than we realize. And so we can escape our environment if we want to, and if we make the right decisions. That all comes down to the way in which our character influences our decisions. And so when I first started there, I realized I had to gain their respect. So I would join in with all the fitness with them. I would give them horrendous fitness sessions, but I would do it with them, and then I would do an extra few reps or an extra few minutes, whatever it was, right? Sparring, I would be sparring with every single one of them, even the ones who thought they were double hard. I was sparring with them as well, and it was a case of you have to meet them where they're at. If you want to inspire a group of young men who are in a similar position to you, who have probably been through some very, very difficult things, you've got to meet them where they're at. And I'll talk about the global charity I've built now, which has exactly the same. We have a rule about this, which I've built with the charity, which I'll talk about. So in that situation, then they started to respect me, right? And initially they would come in, swear, kick their shoes off, not really listen, do a bit of fighting. That's what they wanted to do. Within a year, they were parking their shoes off neatly, bowing as they entered, calling each other sir. They would change the decisions they made. They were sleeping well. Their nutrition was good. And we had 15 young men who became national champions within 12 months.
Wow.
And
within 12 months?
Within 12 months, yeah. And well, they were already fighters,
Yeah,
right? So all I had to do was really
fine-tune them.
Yeah. Sure, they weren't, killing anyone in the ring, but the true work was on their character, not on their technique, right? But it all comes together. And so it was almost like converting them from Cobra Kai to Miyagi Dojo. It was an interesting perspective. But the real power there was how their character changed and how they became individuals who had a moral compass. They knew how to make better decisions in their life, and their life started to improve. And so I thought, well, this is great, right? Young men changing. But what if I could find these young men when they were 4 or 5 or 6 and plant those seeds of a black belt character?
Already from the thing. That's why you say it in your quote. That's why you say it. I get it.
Yeah.
Black belt character.
And this is it. And you look, that was the one change almost 15 years ago now. And now we've taught 30,000 kids with the same methodology.
That's amazing, man. And congratulations, man. That is some achievement.
Thank
and hats off to you for doing it. A lot of people talk, but they don't do it.
Yeah.
They don't do it. So hats off to you, man. Because I know, like, Taekwondo for me, surprisingly, made me calmer.
Yeah.
It made me calmer. I got to see things differently.
Yeah.
So as in, like, if you're going to attack me, I'm now looking at all the variables. I'm not just got you in my eyes. I'm looking at all sorts of things. So for me, as someone who's quite short, I'm going to go for your kneecaps.
Yeah.
And so it just made me do things differently. But also...
It's interesting because one of the greatest forms of self-defense is avoiding the situation entirely in the first place, right? And so that's an environment thing. But also, without a doubt, especially as a guy, you're going to be in situations where you're confronted. Physically confronted or vocally confronted, which can very quickly escalate into a physical confrontation. And so I think when you've studied martial arts for a long time, you're actually far less likely to get into a fight. Because you realize just how dangerous the other person could be. You don't know the stranger.
Correct.
So that person who you take an inexperienced person, they'll end up squaring up to the complete stranger. Like I would completely avoid squaring up to someone. I don't know who they are, what they've trained in, and so on and so on. So for me, the decision to have escalation into violence, I can mitigate that many steps before. And so I'm thinking, you ever seen Sherlock Holmes?
Sherlock Holmes, yes.
Yeah, you know the what's his name, Robert Downey Jr. and how they kind of pause time,
and then they're figuring things out.
Right.
Yes.
So
like this exactly.
Yeah.
This is
so
exactly
when a situation where I can feel there's potential confrontation rising. I feel like I've got a very acute sense of when it's coming, and I can shut it down very
straight
quickly.
away. Yeah,
It's almost like that scene, right? The exit's there. This person's over here, and sometimes one of the best forms of self-defense is a sharp wit and a good sense of humor. And so, if you want to equip your child with learning how to protect themselves, tease them when they're younger. Give them a little bit within reason.
Of course.
Teach them about humor. Teach them how to. Because, if I look at my 6-year-old, we have so much banter between me and her. It's unbelievable. She's so sharp, and she'll tease me on things, and she'll come back and forth and stuff. And she's therefore more resilient if she's ever teased. She enjoys it, the back and forth, the banter. But she's also able to look at me and to pick me apart in a fun way. And, it's like someone in that situation, in a confrontational situation, can immediately de-escalate with a bit of humor.
And I think that stays with you because now, for example, I'm looking at property with my wife.
Yeah.
I walk into a room, and I'm already figuring things out, and then what we could do, but not just as in small things that we could put a couch here. I'm looking at totally things in a totally different landscape, literally in, and it's just so interesting what you're talking about your daughter there. So what my daughter does, she, like we were talking offline, she knows fruit and vegetables in English and in Russian.
Mm-hmm.
So, and how I managed to do that is I have a set of cards with the actual vegetable or fruit on there. I lay them on the floor, and then I taught her which ones are which. And then we play games, and like, okay, find me this. And then she's got to find it. So now when we have either my wife comes in or the nanny comes in or anybody comes in, she knows they're there. So now she's going to play a big game.
Yeah.
She's going to act like she doesn't know anything, and she's going to purposely pick the opposite one. So if I show a banana and an orange, and I'll say, where's a banana? She'll purposely pick the orange. She'll make sure every single one is wrong.
Sense of humor.
To prove a point to me, Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am smarter than you.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm telling everyone, she's not like this.
I think you're in trouble.
Yeah. She is so intelligent. And then the thing is to the point where I record her.
Yeah.
I record her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so now she even knows when she's being recorded. So when she knows the camera's on her, you can see she's already doing this thing from the corner of her eyes. I'm thinking, how does she even know how to do this? Yeah. So she knows she's been recorded. So now I say, okay, Briella, what's like 3 plus 3? And she'll purposely say the wrong answer because she knows she's been recorded. Take the camera off, take everyone out of the room.
So you can do it fine.
Absolutely
How
fine.
funny. Kids are funny, aren't they?
It's amazing. It's
funny.
amazing.
It's just raising them when they develop their own little personalities, and and it comes from you, and you're just like, you kind of spot things. Like I'll spot things my kids do, and I'm like, that's just like your mother. I think I'll look at things and be like, yeah, I know where you got that. That's me. I know where you got that from. And then you look at your own parents and you're like, it's actually very similar. Yeah. And then you get on this road where you're like, God, I think I'm becoming my parents as well.
It happens. It happens. And so, children are absolutely fascinating. And so, I guess the last point I want to touch base on is parents and parenting. We've spoken a lot about children today, upbringing. We've spoken about how there's a lot of ways in what you do as a profession, what you can do to help children from a very young age. But let's talk about parents. How important is a parent to the upbringing of their child? A conversation that a lot of people try to avoid because it hurts parents. It's a conversation I don't like to talk about. So there are 3 things I try to avoid in the conversation bracket. First one is politics, religion, and raising children.
This is with other parents, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't blame you. Those 3 things.
Exactly. They're the 3 things I don't like. So a lot of people, they will like to talk about a situation in politics. I don't like to talk about it because everybody raises their children differently. Everybody idolizes their children. They see their children as the higher abode. And it's just how it is.
And it's horrible as a parent to feel like you're being judged. Right?
Yes.
Like, there's so many parents.
And I
live
don't
with a lot
want
of
to
guilt.
say something.
No.
So if you say to me, Sebastian, Priyesh, my child this or that, or I've done this, I cannot relate.
No.
Because my child is being raised in a different way. So I don't want to say something to you to belittle you, to say that you're doing anything wrong, because you're not doing anything wrong. It's just our decision.
Yeah. I think parents need to be very careful how they do that as well. Because it's such a triggering subject.
Yes, definitely.
It's something I talk about, and so I'm always kind of on the edge of, you got to be careful not to have an opinion, which is why I share my opinions and I say, look, this is what I'm doing. Let me put it this way, okay? And this probably is an easy way to kind of share it and explain my point of view with it. If you look at any career, vocation, sport, or skill, effort is one piece of the puzzle. So let's say you are an accountant, right? You went to university and you learned to become an accountant. You are now an entry-level accountant.
Yes.
Let's say you work really hard. But you don't really learn new things. You're just putting hard work. You're putting the hours in and so on. You're not really evolving.
Effort.
Are you a good accountant or not? You work hard. Do you want to hire that accountant? In 10 years' time, 20 years' time, you're going to hire the same accountant, the one who's not learned anything new, not tried to evolve, but they just put the effort in. Probably not, right? No one wants a hard-working, useless accountant, do they?
Exactly.
So let's talk about the gym, right? You want to go to the gym, you want to lift weights. How many people do you know who lift weights, they put the effort in, but they haven't got a clue what they're doing, and so they end up just getting injured or worse, right? Or they don't get any progress. And so effort is just one piece of the puzzle. But it's interesting with parenting, isn't it? When we approach parenting, just because we put in effort, we assume we're good parents.
This is it. This is it. Are you listening? Are you listening?
And it's one of those hard things. I can't say to a parent, you're trying really hard, but you're not very good, right? But we assume, all of us assume, oh, you know, I'm putting in the long hours, or I'm doing this, and I'm trying my best. Well, your best doesn't really matter, right? It's like you think it's your best because it's just an energy in, almost like 1 calorie in, 1 calorie out. It's an expenditure of energy. And I think trying hard is a given. Parenting's hard, such hard work.
For sure.
You learn so much about yourself. You question everything about life, you know, and then you everything triggers you, and then you realize those triggers are important because you're just learning about yourself.
Absolutely.
And then you're just in this constant barrage. Now you've got to learn how to look after a screaming baby, then a toddler, then a teenager, then a child who doesn't even want to see you, and then then they have to leave home, and you still got to mentor them. And so it's funny for me. It's like we just assume that we're good parents just because we try hard, and that's not the reality. And I think that the foundation is obviously trying hard, and kids imitate what we do more than they listen to what we say. They copy what we do. So if you want to be a good parent, at the very core of what you're doing, you have to show them you're a good person. And just by being a good person morally and with the decisions you make and through your character, they will pick up on this. And so at the very core of your development as a parent needs to be a strong character compass, right? But beyond that, we need to evolve. We need to learn to evolve, right? You look at 50 years ago, it was normal for parents just to hit their kids. That was just normal, right? Kid does something wrong, bang, parent immediately reactively hits their child. And so now we've learned, it's even on, you look at the WHO, World Health Organization website, they talk about the damages of hitting your kids. And yet 40% of the world, hit their children. Even here in Dubai, I know many parents who still hit their kids. Yeah. And they don't realize that, A, it doesn't actually fix the problem. B, it's typically because the parent is struggling with their own emotions and managing their own emotions, and a whole host of other things, right? And so one of the things that you look at when you look at parenting is people don't try and evolve. They just basically wing it. They don't study it. And so the more I've studied being a dad and tried to be a better dad, the more I realize, oh my God, I'm just learning as I go as well. And I've really studied this stuff, and I've worked with so many parents and worked with so many kids, and there's still so much to learn. But you imagine so many parents with 3 or 4 kids, they think they're great parents just because they've had 3 or 4 kids.
Means nothing. Exactly.
And so I think the reality is we should treat parenting like a career. We should take it seriously. And my approach to parenting is this. I say to people, you've got 10 years of building sandcastles, and that's it. And the reason I say that is because from the time they're born until they're 10, they want to spend time with you. After that, they're preteen. They start shifting their attention more to their friends. They want their friends' opinions. Mm-hmm. They want to spend time with their friends. And biologically, as they become teenagers, they're designed to reject the family. And that's because as a species, obviously, we need to separate communities so you don't have problems with fertility and so on, right? And so they're designed to reject you when they get to the preteen stage. And so if you look at the years 0 to 10, that's the golden moment you've got. If I look at my own happiness as a human being, these 10 years of my life right now, where I'm raising 3 kids, are going to dictate a huge amount of my happiness in 10 years' time for the rest of my life. I know so many people who've got a bad relationship with their kids because they didn't spend time with them and work on their parenting over those 10 years. And so they've had so many issues the rest of their life, which has made them unhappy. And so I look at it like, if you just spend those 10 years really digging into the subject of parenting and trying to become a better parent and understanding how parenting's evolved. We've got new data, we've got new information. Just because your parents did it doesn't mean it was the right thing. They probably did the best they did with the information
with what they had, exactly.
Right. And so I don't blame them, or you shouldn't necessarily, unless it was a very toxic situation, blame your parents for everything. Arguably, the generational curses, they could have stopped 9 out of 10 and 1 more left, with you. So it's very hard for us to judge our parents, I think. But what I would say is, if you're an investor, so let me put this in investment terms. If you had 1 ounce of energy, let's say, and you put it into a child who's 0 to 4, this is where you get the most return on your investment. So you'll get 4 back. Good deal?
Fantastic deal.
Good deal. From the age of 5 to 10, you get 2 back. Good deal? 1 in, 2 back?
Oh, I prefer the first one.
Okay. All right. That's because you're a higher trader. The first one is better, right? So early on, 1 to 4, or 0 to 4.
Fantastic.
Biggest return.
Yep.
5 to 10, still
fine.
Fantastic
Still a return. Yep.
10 to 15, one-to-one. That's how I see it.
See, look, that's now.
Now you're going into mentoring territory, right? And now it's a little bit trickier. You don't get the same return back because they're so influential, listening to you, picking up on the values and traits. Those things that you teach in the first 10 years are what's going to set them up for how they respond to the important decisions they make, especially around their peers. And so these 10 years are so crucial. And for me, I'm very, very happy that I work so hard in my 20s to build a business that means that I can be there for the school run in the morning if I want to, right? I wake up at 5 a.m. every day. I go on a 2-hour walk, come back, have breakfast with my kids, so they see me for that time. Then I'll do some work, go to the gym, train, and then I'm back there again when they come home, so I have dinner with them. And I go to bed at the same time as them. It's not very exciting.
But it's you doing what you need to do to build that 10 years.
And it's like I've made sacrifices in my life to make sure these 10 years I'm able to invest as much as I possibly can into their development. Because the reality is I'm not going to be there when the hardest things that they go through in their life, when they go through those things, I probably won't be there.
Yeah.
And so all I can do, if I want to do a good job as a parent, is really work hard on these 10 years.
But you set yourself up for that, right? So you were self-aware and you set yourself up so when the time came for you spending time with your children, you can spend that quality time.
Yeah.
So very similar to what I've done before. We had Briella, myself and my wife, we said we want to be in a position where we I guess, are less selfish. Yeah. We want to have that financial security. We want to be in a position where we are strong and then we will have a child. Now, for the parents that say, but I am there for my kid, I just don't have the time. I work 12-hour shifts. What would you say to those people who will? I'm not going to say an excuse because there are people that have difficult situations, but you were self-aware. You made that step change to make sure when the time came, you were prepared.
Yeah.
I did the exact same thing. Yeah, so I spend a lot of time with my daughter, give her that quality time. So for the parents that don't spend that quality time and would say, but I have this and I have that, what would you say to those type of parents that would use excuses as barriers as to why they cannot spend time with their child?
I would say this, go back to what we're saying. Are you trying really hard as a parent, right? The answer is yes, they are. Does that make them a good parent? The answer is no. It's as simple as that. I know no one wants to say it, but if you're not spending both quantity and quality of time with your kids during those first 10 years, you're probably not maximizing the potential you've got to be a good parent.
Correct.
That's the reality.
No.
And we all tiptoe around it. We can't judge people. And I agree with that. And, I grew up in a house where I had, both parents working with 4 kids, working government jobs. My dad would go away to war for 6 months at a time and so on, right? It was, we would have without a dad for 6 months. But when he would come back, he'd be really present and we'd have that quality time with him. And he did a fantastic job. But was that the ideal situation? Probably not, right? If you had to sit down with a pen and paper and draw out the ideal situation and the ideal time and the ideal everything to be the perfect parent and role model and everything for your child, would that be it, what you're doing right now? No. Okay. And so is it a kind of a fallacy to assume that we can have this perfect parenting life? Probably. But are there many things that we could do to actually improve what we're doing? Yes.
Absolutely.
And I think that for a lot of people, they're not ready to have kids. I think they have kids before they're ready. And arguably they weren't careful enough, or they had them too early, or whatever it was.
Peer pressure?
Maybe society is expecting them to have kids earlier in some ways, maybe from family, maybe from friends, and again, different ethnic minorities and so on. Then big family,
Of course.
But sometimes it's like, well, actually, you're not ready for it. Mentally, maturity, time wise, and arguably you could have them too late. You're not ready for it, and so there is a sweet spot for sure. But I think that when you look at it, like if you had to design your life, how would you design it? You would design it so that those 10 years, which is nothing, right? It's like 13%, 12% of your life. If you could just design your life so that those 10 years would be the most amount of quality time, quantity time, and effective time, as in you are studying to become a better parent, you use that knowledge to improve their life, then when would you do that in your life? And so for a lot of this, I look at it and I'm like, we've got to be kind of pragmatic with how we look at it. I think that it's one of those things where, the future of our kids depends on the sacrifices we make over those 10 years. On the flip side of this, you've got a lot of people who are so ambitious that they end up not spending any time with their kids.
Because career comes first.
Right. And then they look back with regret. Right. So like right now, I could be traveling the world, scaling the Warrior Academy into the USA or Australia, whatever it is. But I'm saying, right, I need to be here for my kids now. They need me around now. Maybe the best time to do that is in a few years' time. Right? And so I'm making sacrifices with the business so that I can actually be around now and then dive back in at a later point. I know lots of business owners who have poured so much ambition into everything they're doing, and they're saying, I'm doing this for my kids.
It's the common.
I'm doing this for kids. And do you know why? Because they feel that they want to leave their kids a legacy. The greatest legacy that you can leave someone is not what you leave with them. It's what you leave in them. If you want to really give your kids an incredible legacy, it starts with their education. Teach them the things that you were never taught. And that starts at its core with what we said at the very beginning, which is with a character, right? A strong moral compass. This is the core of your education. It should be. And your kids won't learn that from a book when they're younger. They learn it by watching their parents. And if the parents aren't around, who are they watching? Right? True. And the majority of people in Dubai, they sacrifice time with their kids so they can go and earn money for their kids, right? And then they pay as little as they can for a nanny to look after their kids. And I'm not judging that, but what I'm saying is...
I get it.
You know, those 10 years that they've got, for a lot of the kids' time, they're watching someone else rather than the parent.
But they're the same people that...
vastly different background.
They're the same people that have just said, I'm going to work to get all this money for my kids. But then why get the...
Because they don't understand.
Why get the cheap nanny that you know is not going to give you that quality time with your child, and it's just a job for them?
Exactly.
So is it really for your kids?
Exactly. But this is it. And so we feel good when we say things are for our kids, but actually I think that for a lot of people, they've got a selfish ambition beyond their kids. But for a lot of people, their kids become their ambition. I think your ambitions change and evolve as you have kids for a lot of people. What you want in life changes, right? How can it not? When you create life, it's like, how can you not change the course and direction of what you actually want? Because it changes the way you see everything. And
Absolutely.
It's amazing. But I would agree with you. You know, I think that for a lot of people, they chase their ambitions selfishly. Correct. But they pin it as, I'm doing this for my kids. Yeah. Your kids just want you. They just want your time. Like, if you want to be a great dad, just spend time with them more. That's it. Research how to be a good dad. Don't just assume because you're trying hard you're a good dad. You're probably not. The energy is one element. Okay, but learn how to regulate your emotions. Learn what each trigger means. These are all signals your kids are trying to teach you.
But a lot of people won't read about how to become a better father.
Right.
Yeah, they won't.
But they'll get a personal trainer if they want to get fit.
Of course.
Right?
It makes no sense,
Or they'll do extra courses if they're an accountant and want to improve on their skills.
So is that putting your child, I'm doing it for my children, is people just say it for the sake of saying it then?
I think our duty as parents to learn how to be better parents. And I think we shouldn't assume that we're good parents just because we've got kids.
But I can, Sebastian, I can scroll on Facebook and I can see Julie's kid doesn't look like my kid. That kid is a little bit fat. So I must be a good parent. Yeah. Go to the next parent.
Downward comparison.
Oh, look at that one. Doesn't even know the ABCs. Yeah. Mine knows this one and that one. So then surely my one's...
So examples of downward comparison. Now you'll do the same thing and you'll have upward comparison. But you're like, their kids are studying 5 different languages and their kids are doing this, and do you know what I mean? And so we've got this unhealthy relationship with comparison, which is fascinating because then it makes us, how do we feel about being a parent? And we're all going on our own different journeys.
Absolutely.
And so I think that my journey as a dad tells me that I need to become a better dad every day. And so I don't assume just because I'm trying hard that I'm a good dad, but I know that I've got 10 years to crack this, right? And then my relationship changes. It's not like suddenly my work's done. Kids, completed it. It's 10 years, and then you move from being a carer to a mentor. And this is the shift I'm starting to see in my business too, you know. Building a business is like raising a kid. You create this thing out of nowhere, right? And it's like, and it's like your personality, right? It's got a similar personality to you and the values and traits you share, and if it's this family feel as it grows and grows, and then you realize as it gets older, it starts maturing. It needs less of you. And so really to be a great business owner, it's similar to a parent, this balance between protection and empowerment. And your job is to make sure this business survives without you. And so you go through this stage of adolescence where you have these like teething problems, right? And then you learn to step back a little bit. And so this business starts to develop on its own, and it starts to go off and create new partnerships, and it's being influenced now by its peers, a management team, a leadership team, the staff, whoever's around it, right? And so your role changes from carer to mentor. And so you're there just in the background, constantly there, just tweaking the odd little bit, making sure we're back on track. We're a little bit off, back on track.
Get it back online.
With that moral compass. So this is how we are. This is how we operate. And so this is where your values as a business come in, right? Your values as a human being come in. And so rather than giving such hardcore advice, do this, do that, do this, do that, it more becomes a case of your child looking back over their shoulder when they make mistakes and saying, actually, yeah, this is the way I've been taught to live. These are my values. These are my morals. All of that comes back to a solid character development that you give your child in those first 10 years.
And it's so important because in my industry, it's so easy for people who initially start with a moral compass to go wayward because this opportunity can get me this sort of millions.
Yeah.
This one can go there. And that's where the dishonesty comes into it. And that's where people go down the fraudulent route and they do things. There's been many times where I've been pitched to turn my business into something like a prop firm. A prop firm is where you would have to take a challenge, and then there's a set of rules and regulations which you will need to abide by. You can only trade within a certain time, a certain type of risk. If you pass the challenge, I'll give you another challenge. Pass the second challenge, I will give you an account, a trading account in which you can then trade with the same rules, but then now you can withdraw that profit. So this
super high risk then, basically.
Oh,
right?
it's
over-leveraged.
the stats of this is ridiculous. Basically, I think it's ridiculous. Like 0.6% get over even 3 months.
Wow.
So it's designed for you to lose money. So this was pitched to me many times. I cannot do it. I don't care if it gives me millions. I don't care if it gives me millions. Knowing that I'm giving this to you, knowing you are about to lose, I cannot do that.
Yeah.
I cannot do that. Now, a lot of people went down that route because it made them a lot of money. And now my business struggles because all the people go to those avenues thinking that's how they're all going to become famous traders. It's not going to happen. Like, I know firsthand that you are going to lose because it's designed for you to lose. So when we talk about moral compass, I'm not going to teach my daughter a trick to become financially free using this. I want you to do things with a good heart, because it's the right thing to do, right? And I want my daughter to see me as her superhero, all right? So all kids love superheroes, and I always said is that when one day she's going to go to school and it's going to be a superhero day, and then everyone's going to say my superhero is Batman.
Yep.
I want my daughter to say my superhero is my dad, because I want her to grow up with morals, respect, And one thing that you said about during that a lot of people find it difficult to spend time with their children. When coronavirus happened, I cannot fathom to understand or accept how many people complained about spending time with their children now they are at home. It was very sad for me to read.
Just to throw something in there, which is fairly controversial, I don't think a lot of people want to. I think the reality is, are you familiar with Dr. DeMartini?
No.
And his work? So one of the world's leading behavioral psychologists. He's got a theory around the 7 values that we live by, right? And so, so I'm often around incredible people who are maybe super successful in business, and so they've really maximized the business element of their life, right? The financial element of their life, but they haven't got a healthy relationship at home. They haven't got a great family. They're not in great shape or whatever it is. So there's 7, or spirituality, there's 7 elements. And so for a lot of people, they value different things. For a lot of people, they would value business, entrepreneurship, finance, and so on more than the familial element. And so for them, they get most of they're lit up more by their business and the finances and growing something and creating something than just being around the family. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
That's their joy and pride.
That's fine. You've still got a responsibility as a parent.
Absolutely.
To do an incredible job as a parent. That's what I think you should do. And I think you should study to do that. And I think you should maybe sacrifice some things, a lot of things, to do that. But you can't hide from the fact that for a lot of people, they get more of a kick out of building their businesses than they do spending time with their families. And I think you've got to be aware as a team. Let's say you're a husband and wife raising a family. how you work together with that. If you look at a relationship, you've typically got one person who's more social. They want to spend time with, the friends more. And the other person might be more, financial driven or business driven. They want to spend time on their own, building their business on their spreadsheets, whatever it is, right? And so they're quite happy doing that for 8 hours a day. That would make this person hate their life, and vice versa. And so that person's empowering the relationship by giving them the finances and bringing that in and encouraging the family to grow its own financial independence, whereas the other person is improving the family by making sure they've got social connections, they've got a strong family unit and so on. And I'm not saying that this person who's focusing on the business can't do any of that. Of course they can. But their priority in their mind is that they actually enjoy spending that time more. So you look at something like COVID, we all did more of the thing that we enjoy the most or that we value the most. So some people went crazy about fitness and they just did loads of fitness because they valued it the most. Other people, they started creating side hustles, they started making new businesses and so on. Other people just spent all their time playing with their kids. And so what I found during COVID was we spent more time doing the things that were highest in our values.
Wow, I didn't even... Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It's a lot of sense.
It was an eye-opener for me when I realised that. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of the viewers watching, what did you spend the most of your time doing, right?
Yeah.
Because that's very, very eye-opening.
It was interesting for me because we lost our entire business during COVID. And so I created several other businesses. They all became six-figure businesses within a few months. And I had to do that. So I was forced into doing that, but I loved it. Like I felt like I was so creative in creating these other businesses. I'd spend 12 to 14 hours, in the office building, creating, and I really enjoyed that. And then I spent lots of time with my kids as well. And so, it might sound strange for me to say, look, I really leaned into that value of business and entrepreneurship. A lot of that was probably because I wanted to protect my family. A lot of it was because I selfishly loved the creative side of it, right? I think just being self-aware of where you're spending your time, because it's probably what your highest values are.
Oh, it was panic stations over here, everybody all of a sudden logged on to YouTube. How to trade successfully, how to invest. And then you got, of course, people have to realize the difference between traders and YouTubers.
Yeah.
They're doing it for a reason.
Yeah.
They're getting paid from social
Yeah.
media. Of course, they're going to put something clickbait. They're going to tell you do A, B, and C. If it was so easy, wouldn't we all be rich?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
You want
the easy route, huh?
Of course. And so
Human nature.
that is what it is, man. So COVID wasn't the best for us, but here we are, man. And we're happy. We're happy. And that's the main thing. We've got good health, and then so that's the main thing. And my family, utmost importance to me. And so I value when you spoke about job, career, and stuff. I love having my career. I love with what I do, but I love my family, and I want to do what's right for them. And so I want my daughter to watch how her mum and dad are, grow up with respect, morals, to have fun, to take risks. And find happiness and peace, and
So
just be happy. Yeah, that's it, man. And so with that, I want to say thank you, Sebastian. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Please do share with the audience how they can get involved with the Warrior Academy, and for those people who have children.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Warrior Academy is a big part of what I do. We've obviously got academies across the UAE. We're the largest martial arts organisation in the UAE. We have academies in the UK as well, so warrioracademy.ae or warrioracademy.co.uk. But a big part of what I do right now is the charity side. So 2 years ago, I started a charity called the Bates Foundation. I visited Kenya, and I went to a homeless shelter in Thika. And when I walked in, there were 30 boys who in the last 6 months have been found on the street, mostly by railways.
Wow.
A lot of these
Abandoned?
kids, some were without parents, abandoned. Some of them came from rural Kenya, got onto a train to try and find food, resources, money, whatever it was. And then the train left, and then they're in Nairobi, and suddenly they're just lost in, around the area, and they don't know how to get back. They don't know where they live, they don't know anything, so they're just stuck there. So they end up going into the wrong places, gangs, all sorts. So they end up in, 7 to 9 year olds addicted to substances, malnourished, and so on. And so the big challenge this particular charity had was transitioning them to education. They've got 6 months from the government to say, right, you've got 6 months to look after these kids, otherwise they're back on the street. You've got to put them into full-time education. So they try to nurture them. They give them one decent meal a day. They're in bunk beds. They give them a set of clothes to wear and this sort of stuff. And when they get to full-time education, they reject authority because they've only ever been beaten up by authority, their parents, the police, whatever it is. So they escape. They make the wrong decisions. They're back on the street. And so when we went there, I implemented this character development program that we know through the Warrior Academy we won 15 international awards for, and we've written books about it, so we know it works. And so we implemented this. They train every single day. And so the concept there is that these 30 boys then go on to their school, but they act as assistant instructors to a class that we've already built there. So now they've got buy-in with something they actually care about, and they make the right decisions.
Smart.
So this is an idea 2 years ago, and now we've got 4,000 orphans every single week that we teach across 5 countries.
Congratulations.
So Kenya, thank you. Kenya, Nepal, Sri Lanka, India. We're about to open up into Uganda and the favelas of Rio. So I've just secured 40 passports for these children around these 5 countries to bring them to Dubai for the Warrior World Championships we're doing. And so I'm on a mission over the next 3 years to grow this from 4,000 orphans to 10,000 orphans in every continent. And so about, we set this goal 2 years ago, so we're 2 years in, we're about 30 to 40% of the way through it. But now it gets tricky because I basically self-funded this entire charity. It's cost me 6 figures plus every year, and I love doing it. But I've realized now in order to scale, we need to then bring on funding. And so one of the things I'm now doing from a charity perspective is looking to work with patrons, a small group of people, basically entrepreneurs, business owners who want to come with me on a 3-year journey to visit these locations and so on in order to see things how I see things. And so my promise to patrons who join us is when you go through this, it's going to change the way you look at life. That's it, 3 years, and I promise after 3 years, you'll look at life differently.
That's amazing.
It's an adventure.
That's amazing.
And it's
and congratulations.
Thank you, yeah. And do you know what it is, though? Here's the thing, because when it comes to trading as well, I think this is really key. Exist for a reason beyond making money.
Absolutely.
If you don't, and you have the worst financial year ever, the markets are dead, you don't do very well, whatever it is, there's a recession, that might be the worst year of your life financially, but it could be the best year of your life from an impact point of view.
Absolutely.
And if you just existed for a reason more than making money as a business, right? Capitalism. It's like if you just existed for a reason beyond that, then it could be the most incredible year of impact. And if you don't do that, you leave half the fulfillment your business can give you on the table.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And wow, that's amazing. Business owners, anybody that would like to get involved, for those of you who know me, drop me a message. I'll get you guys in touch with Sebastian. The links are going to be down, obviously, in the description as well. And so, again, thank you. And this has been an absolute joy, and I've learned a lot as well. And so, yeah, you're very inspiring, Sebastian, I must say.
Thank you.
And so, and I'm sure everyone is going to really thoroughly enjoy watching this. And so thank you for coming on. To the audience, as usual, guys, if you like what you heard, then please like, comment, subscribe. And then I'll catch you guys on the next episode of Memoirs of a Trader. Sebastian, thank you very much.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers.